Yo, what is going on, guys? It is your boy Nick here, back again with a brand new video today. We're going to be continuing my series in which I review every single Marvel Cinematic Universe film up to the release of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Today we're going to be reviewing Spider-Man Homecoming, which is the fourth film in Phase 3. A little backstory for Spider-Man Homecoming. When this film was originally announced, I was very nervous about it, and I actually did not think it was going to be very good at all. And when I saw Tom Holland in Captain America Civil War, when he made his debut as Spider-Man, I thought he was alright, but I didn't really know if he was going to be a good Spider-Man. There was part of me who thought that he was a little bit too young to play Spider-Man, which I know is ironic because he's a high school kid, but I was kind of used to him being more of an older high school kid and not so much a freshman. And then also, there was a lot of changes to his version of Spider-Man that I wasn't sure if I was going to like it. But then Spider-Man Homecoming came out, and I really enjoyed the film, so let's talk about it. So Spider-Man Homecoming was directed by John Watts, and it has a great cast of people I'm going to go through. The first one, obviously, being Tom Holland, which, whenever I first saw him in Captain America Civil War, I wasn't sure whether or not he was going to be a good Spider-Man or good Peter Parker, but he is excellent as Peter Parker. He did a really good job at capturing that youth and that sense of fun that Spider-Man is known to have in the comics and the quips and everything. Tom Holland really embraces that youthfulness of Peter Parker very, very well. And I think that, to be completely honest, all these movies later that we've had him in, he was the perfect casting choice for Spider-Man in the MCU. So yeah, Tom Holland surprised me in the best way possible as Peter Parker, and I could not be more thankful that he's our Spider-Man now. I also really love a lot of the supporting characters in this film. For example, I really like Jacob Batalon, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, who plays Ned Leeds. He's Spider-Man's best friend in this movie, and he has absolutely great chemistry with Tom Holland. The two of them do feel like real friends who get along together. They feel like guys you would see hanging out after school, and they feel like real authentic friends. I think the chemistry between these two is just unmatched. Ned is really one of my favorite sidekicks in a Marvel movie, to be completely honest. Robert Downey Jr. is also good as Tony Stark. I mean, he doesn't come out too much in this movie, but he's good whenever he's there, and he plays a central role to the story, which I appreciate. But I also like the fact that this wasn't a movie where it was like Iron Man is Batman and Spider-Man is Robin. It was more like it's a movie about Spider-Man if he were to work under Tony Stark, and then Tony Stark kind of having that experience kind of take on being a superhero. And speaking of great acting, I also love Michael Keaton as Adrian Toomes, also known as the Vulture in this film. He is, in all honesty, one of the best Spider-Man villains that we've had in a movie. He's one of the most memorable MCU villains, which is a good thing because, as you know, the MCU has a reputation to have very not memorable villains. So I'm glad that they did Michael Keaton justice in Spider-Man Homecoming with his villain, and he plays the villain very well, and also he has a very good story that overlaps with Spider-Man's story very, very well, so they did a great job with that. And the rest of the supporting cast is pretty good too. Marissa Tomei is pretty good as Aunt May, and even though she's a lot younger than the other Aunt Mays, I think she makes a kind of interesting counterbalance to Tom Holland, since he's such a young Spider-Man. I feel like it makes sense to have his aunt be a little bit younger, but yeah, she's really good as Aunt May. Also, Laura Harrier as Liz Allen is pretty good. We don't see her in the movie too much, but she has good chemistry with Tom Holland. Tony Revolori is really funny as this kind of nerdy version of Flash. I kind of like the fact that they changed up Flash, that he's not just this huge douchey kind of jock bully. He's actually a nerdy bully who's in Spider-Man's social group, and he just mocks him all the time just because he feels the need to for some reason. Also, Zendaya is really good as MJ. We don't see her too much this movie. We see her more in the other two movies, and she gets a lot more interesting in that one. And also Martin Starr as the teacher. Funny little thing, actually, this doesn't have much to do with the review, but Martin Starr as the teacher, if you go back to The Incredible Hulk, he actually was a college student at one of the universities that Bruce Banner goes to in that movie, which is really funny considering that he's here all these years later, but also that was the first MCU movie that I guess wasn't part of Disney, or that's not owned by Disney because it's owned by Universal, and he makes his second appearance in a Sony MCU movie. I don't know, I just find that funny. I also think the action sequences in this movie are pretty good. Now, to be completely honest, Spider-Man Homecoming is not an excellent action film. It's mostly about the conflicts going on between the characters, but when the action's there, it is pretty cool, and there are some sequences that I do really like, but it's not as memorable as a lot of the action sequences in a lot of the other Marvel movies. So they are pretty entertaining at the height of it. This movie also has a really great screenplay with a lot of great jokes and dialogue into it. This is one of my most rewatched MCU movies, and this is one that every time I watch it, I kind of remember some of the jokes and stuff because it just has such memorable jokes, and the actors tell it with the perfect amount of charisma and with the perfect comedic timing. I think that the script of this movie is great. It's one of my favorite scripts probably in the MCU. The movie also has a good soundtrack. It has some interesting blend of different kinds of music in it. And it's not as memorable as the Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack, but I like the fact that they decided to put music in the movie that wasn't just the score, so I think that's really cool. And actually, speaking of the score, I think that this is one of the best scores in the MCU. Michael Giacchino's score is terrific. It's one of the more memorable MCU scores because, to be completely honest, I feel like outside of the Spider-Man movies, the only Marvel scores I tend to really remember is the Avengers. So I'm glad the Spider-Man scores are a lot more memorable from the MCU, especially considering that Danny Elfman's made such an incredible score with the first two films. And this film also has a great plot twist. And I'm not going to go into the details about the plot if you haven't seen this film for whatever reason, but there's a really good plot twist that they built towards it really, really well, that whenever I saw it in theaters, I was very surprised. It still kind of surprises me to this day, if I'm being completely honest. And they did that thing where I felt like they didn't butcher the plot twist, kind of like how they butchered the Mandarin plot twist in Iron Man 3, so I'm glad that Marvel did their thing here. I do have a few flaws with this movie, nothing overly major, but just some things that I kind of would have liked to have they done some things differently. For example, Liz Allen, although she has good chemistry with Tom Holland, she is the least memorable significant other for Spider-Man. She's not bad, and there's some aspects of her character that I kind of like, and there's like some scenes between her and Peter that I think are interesting, but she's just the least memorable and also kind of like the least interesting of all of Spider-Man's significant others that we've had in the films before that. So if I'm being completely honest, like, she's great in the movie and she's fine, it's just that she's not the most memorable. So whenever I think back of Spider-Man Homecoming, she's like not one of the aspects I think of too much. And as I said before, I said although the action sequences are good, I like the action sequences in some of the other movies better. Aside from that, though, those are really my only flaws with Spider-Man Homecoming. I love this movie. It's one of my favorite MCU movies. It's also not my favorite Spider-Man movie, but one of my favorite Spider-Man movies, and I think that they did everything nearly perfectly. There's just a few things I thought that they could have done a little bit better, but that stuff aside, Spider-Man Homecoming is a fantastic Marvel movie. I'm going to give it an overall rating of a 9 out of 10, and I'm going to give it an overall grade of an A. So that was my review for Spider-Man Homecoming. Make sure that you tune into my channel just a few more days for my review of the next movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Thor Ragnarok. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified about my latest videos. Leave a comment down below letting me know what you think. And yeah, that's been it. Peace.